Hello everybody, this is Dr. Bill Geary and welcome to another Training into Practice video. We call them tips. This is part of our free coalition evaluation video series sponsored by Global Evaluation Solutions. They're designed to be quick overviews that you can use on your own, or you can use them in meetings to help generate discussions. The idea for this video came from one of our subscribers who wanted to know if we could provide some background information on evidence-based strategies. She had members on her coalition who really weren't familiar with the concept. So let's get started. Today's agenda, briefly we're going to talk about what is evidence-based, what does that refer to. We're going to talk a little bit about why it's important. We're going to walk through a specific example called the NREPP, and then I'll have some closing remarks. So first, what is evidence-based practice? And here I used a definition provided out of the University of Washington. It summarizes all of the key concepts. Some of the key concepts or terms around evidence-based here is that it's a systematic process. It's based on science and it demonstrates positive outcomes. So let's talk a little bit about why we might want to engage in using evidence-based practices. Often when we're designing programs or practices to solve problems in our community, we might use some combination of these elements, right? First, there might be tradition. Maybe in your community they've always had a relationship with some provider, and that provider has been providing some program or practice. Some gut feeling that somehow this approach should work. Maybe some subjective experience that we have, right? We often think that because something we think might have worked once may work over and over and over again, or some type of single observation where we are familiar with another community that may have done something, and maybe they demonstrated to us that they had some level of success. Using evidence-based programs kind of challenges this approach a little bit and has us using a different set of criteria, right? And at the heart of that, of course, is using science to make decisions, looking at the evidence that's derived from that science in terms of what works under what kinds of conditions, focusing on the objective nature of the science, in that no one really has much to lose or gain whether it succeeds or fails in terms of who is measuring its success, and that often involves multiple observations in a variety of settings. So in other words, using programs or practices that are evidence-based helps increase the chances that we will be effective. Now, it's important to know that there are different evidence-based lists out there depending on what kinds of outcomes we want to focus on. Some examples that I pulled quickly off the internet: the CEBC, which focuses on child welfare issues for youth and adults. The Blueprints for Violence Prevention obviously focuses on violence. And there is the NREPP, which focuses on behavioral health, primarily mental health and substance abuse issues. Now, all of these lists, regardless of where you get them from, have some basic similarities. So it's important to understand that, to understand the process that we go through. First, there's some set of qualifications for review of these research studies. Second, some process for assessing the research on the program or practice, and then of course finally categorizing the research about a program or practice that helps us decide if we want to use it. So we're going to walk through one quick example. I have the NREPP logo up here, which is the National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices, and that list is maintained by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. So let's walk through what the minimal qualifications are if you want to be on the SAMHSA's national registry. All right. So first, The program or the practice that's being reviewed has to be in the areas of mental health or substance abuse. Second, there must be what they define as a rigorous experimental or quasi-experimental research design. And finally, the results of the search must be published in either a peer-reviewed journal, that's the kind of journal where other scientists make a decision about whether it should be published or not, or in some type of comprehensive evaluation report. Now, if those qualifications are met, then SAMHSA will assess the research based on these 4 general criteria. They will look at the research and assess first how strong is the research methodology, and we call that the rigor. They will assess the overall impact of the program or practice. They will assess if the program or practice was run in a way that it was supposed to be run, and we call this program fidelity. And then they will examine whether or not there is general support for the overall approach that the program or practice is based on. Now then, using those criteria, SAMHSA will then categorize the program or practice into a category that summarizes the research on each program or practice that is examined. So they may say that the research for this program or practice is what would be referred to as not conclusive, which means there really isn't enough information available to assess the effectiveness of the program or practice. They could determine that an approach or practice is not effective, which means either there was no impact on the desired outcome, or it could mean that the program or practice actually increased the problem that you're trying to solve. On the other hand, and what we really want to look for if we're using the NREPP list, the science might demonstrate that the program or practice is either promising, which means there is some evidence that it works, or effective, which means that the evidence is very strong that it works. This process allows SAMHSA to do our homework for us to some extent. It helps us narrow down the list of potential programs and practices that will help us be successful. So in our next video, I will show you how easy it is to use the NREPP website to find an effective program or practice, and I'll provide some important considerations to keep in mind when deciding which program or practice to pursue. We'll actually walk through the website, and I'll show you how you would do a search. In the meantime, thanks for joining us. Please don't forget to subscribe or like this video, and if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments box or send me an email at wgeary@globalevaluationsolutions.com. Also, please send us any ideas that you may have for future videos. I know how crazy life can get, so don't forget the immortal lyrics of the Eagles who sang, "Take it easy, don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy." Bye-bye, everybody.